Malikoff, who will introduce the topic, and the Reverend Al Sharpton.
First, welcome. This forum is the first of the Institute's monthly public programs taking place during the coming academic year. These events bring together New York regional labor members, scholars, and activists to discuss and debate the pressing issues of our time and our city. And as we will soon see, today we are discussing issues that are plenty timely and pressing. You'll find flyers on your chairs for the next forum, which will take place on October 31st, called Jobs and Climate, Two Crises, One Solution. It will build on the momentum coming out of the People's Climate March this Sunday, September 21st, and will feature Bill McKibben, founder and director of 350.org, one of the main forces behind the People's Climate March. 350 is the safe level of carbon dioxide in parts per million in the atmosphere. We're now at 397 ppm and climbing. As most of you know, the Murphy Institute is a wonderful institution. Now in its 31st year, it serves workers and the labor movement by offering BA and MA programs in workforce development, labor studies, and now urban studies. We run a highly successful union semester program each year. Details are available in the material on everyone's seat, and our staff members are around the room for you to talk to and answer questions that you might have after the forum. Finally, this forum also highlights our expanding urban studies program. A great new addition to our faculty is Professor Michael Fortner. Michael, where are you? Can you raise your hand? Stand up. Thanks. Who is academic director of the urban studies program. We're also planning to introduce a community semester program modeled on the urban semester program, and staff members will be happy to talk with you about that as well if you have ideas. Eve Barron, who is the program director for urban studies, is also with us. In a few minutes, we'll hear from Reverend Al Sharpton, one of the few people in our city who genuinely needs no introduction. Before we turn to him, however, I've been asked to share a few thoughts to frame the discussion. And then we'll hear from the Reverend for about half an hour, and we'll have a chance for some questions and answers afterwards. And we'll end promptly about 11:15 or so. In the spring of 1997, for those, many of you, I guess, in the room who can remember back that far, when Ruth Messenger began to campaign to unseat Rudy Giuliani for mayor, as was our speaker today also campaigning, she got strong advice that she raised the subject of the abusive way in which police officers were treating Black and Latino young men in New York City. She was reluctant to do so because of the broad support for the zero-tolerance crime-fighting tactics of Mayor Giuliani and Police Commissioner Howard Safer, who had recently succeeded Bill Bratton. She feared that strong advocacy for those who were on the receiving end of abusive treatment would alienate many white voters whose support she would need to win the election. Then, on the night of August 9th, 10th, the police arrested Abner Louima and badly abused him, one could say tortured him, in the station house. Our speaker, Reverend Sharpton, made the outrage about Louima's treatment the centerpiece of his campaign. As a result, Messenger almost failed to make the 40% margin that she needed for the nomination and went on to an historic defeat by Rudy Giuliani. And left in the wake of that election was a badly divided Democratic Party that did not come together, all its various wings, around a winning nominee until 2013. Fast forward to today. Violent crime is at an historic low rate in New York City today. From a high of 2,014 murders in 1990, that figure fell to 335 last year in 2013. Violent crime, robbery, assault, and other more common crimes that make people afraid of walking around their neighborhoods have fallen almost as steeply. From over 100,000 in 1990, the number of robberies fell to 19,128 in 2013, even as the city's population grew and became more diverse. This is a wonderful, even miraculous achievement for the city in general, and particularly for those who live in middle and low-income Black and Latino neighborhoods where violent crimes have historically been most prevalent. It's hard to understate the importance of this achievement, which had many positive ramifications in terms of neighborhood residents feeling freer and more secure in inhabiting their communities, making our city more attractive for people to move here and live here, improving our economy, and raising property values. At the same time, we've continued to experience many highly disturbing moments concerning how police interact with those they are policing. And Eric Garner's death is just the most recent of a long series. For me, this raises two basic questions. First, did policing practices have a lot to do with the fall of the violent crime rate in New York City? And second, if so, can the New York City Police Department produce the same positive results without abusing minority young men and violating their civil rights? Our speaker and I would both like the answer to both of these questions to be yes. The evidence from research on the first question is mixed. There may be other reasons besides policing that help drive down the violent crime rate, particularly the waning of the crack epidemic. Yet my own look at the data and my understanding of the CompStat process within the police department convinces me that policing does make a real difference. Specifically, concentrating police resources on the places where the incidence of crime is high, when combined with efforts that get weapons off the street, have, in my view, had a very positive effect. So, unlike some of my friends, I do think the answer to the first question is yes, even though many other factors clearly are also contributing to the fall of the crime rate. But do the police have to mistreat young Black and Hispanic men and be an oppressive force in their neighborhoods to get this result? Which parts of police practices really affect crime rates and should be retained, and which can be and must be stopped or reformed because they mistreat people, sometimes with very bad outcomes, and also because they heighten the alienation that neighborhood residents feel towards the police, thus undermining the trust and cooperation that underlie effective policing. Two final thoughts before we turn to Reverend Sharpton. Between Abner Louima and Eric Garner, we had had far too many instances of police mistreatment, or worse. Despite repeated promises from police commissioners and mayors to retrain beat cops and change street-level practices, it is not clear that we have fundamentally changed the ways in which cops interact with people when they are going about their policing. Even now, the number of stop question frisked has fallen sharply from its high levels a few years ago, but the number of misdemeanor arrests have been rising, perhaps taking the place of the former practices. Can we reform daily practice in the NYPD to keep crime low while honoring everyone's civil rights? Do we know exactly what we need to change? And if so, do we know how to put those changes in place? And do we have the political will to do so? A final thought before turning to our speaker. One reason that it is hard to sustain the outrage about police misconduct is that, if forced to make a choice, many New Yorkers, including the city's great Black and Hispanic middle class, might choose more aggressive policing and security over a return to higher levels of crime with less pressure on young people. As the greatest beneficiaries of the fall of the crime rate, most Black and Hispanic voters in New York City are not soft on crime. With these thoughts as a preface, it is my great pleasure to turn the microphone over to the one and only Reverend Al Sharpton. One thing you may not know about him is that the National Action Network, of which he is the founding president, now has over 40 chapters and affiliates around the country, and he is a national figure as well as a great local figure on this topic. Reverend Sharpton.
Thank you. Two things I want to elaborate on that was raised in your comments and get into my own and then the Q&A is that one is that it is interesting as he recounted the 97 race with Ruth Messenger, which did divide the Democratic Party. around the question of policing and did not come back together until 13 when the Democrats won the city. The first time since since the defeat of 93, I'd say since 89. And what was interesting is that one of the main things that brought the party together to victory in 2013 was another police matter, stop and frisk. And Bill de Blasio, who took a strong position on that, was able to win with that as one of his main themes. I would say pre-K and stop and frisk was his main theme. And he carried the overwhelming majority of black and Latino districts against a black candidate who was a lot more moderate on that image. So it's interesting, I never thought about it, but it's interesting how policing divided the party and policing united the party for victory when you look at the 97 race and the 2013 race. And the fact that I was in the center of both is just some dessert for the meal.